When you look at Mel Brooks, you're staring right into the heart of comedy history. This man is 98, a living legend carved out of laughter and heartbreak. He's buried friends, said goodbye to his wife, and outlived almost every great from his golden era. For decades, Mel was the guy who could pull a laugh out of the darkest times, no matter how heavy life got. This is the same Mel who used to spend quiet nights with Rob Reiner, eating dinner off TV trays, and watching Jeopardy like it was their sacred ritual. But yesterday, when cameras caught him outside his hidden-away home, where he's lived almost completely off the grid for years, there was no spark, no grin, no quick one-liner to break the silence. The air around him just felt cold, like the weight of 100 years finally came crashing down on his shoulders.
It's still tremendous. It's a big shock.
Now Hollywood's losing its mind. The shocking news about Rob Reiner, the chaos, the arrest of his son Nick, it's all got the industry trembling. One brutal night, and an entire dynasty looks like it's cracking apart right before everyone's eyes. And through all this noise, Mel Brooks hasn't said a single word. That silence, it's deafening. Everyone in Hollywood knows Noah wasn't just some friend to Rob's father. He was family. Rob's godfather, his Uncle Mel, the same man who changed his diapers, taught him comedic timing, and watched him grow from a wild kid into one of the most respected directors in the game. Mel wasn't watching from a distance. He was in it, every step of the way. When Mel finally agreed to let a trusted journalist step into his living room, there were no fancy lights, no camera crew, no PR team polishing his words, just a small recorder and a heavy dose of truth spilling out.
I talk about it and it's hard for me. When I first visited the site where Medgar Evers was killed, which is where we shot the reenactment of it, right on the very site, and they were taking me through it. I stood on the driveway at the spot that he was murdered and I started crying.
What came next wasn't some prepped statement. It was a confession, raw, tense, and real. It turned everything upside down about what people thought went down inside that Brentwood house. Mel didn't even start with the crime itself. He started with guilt. Sitting in that old armchair, his hands shook, not from age, but pure frustration. He said people kept calling it a tragedy, a break, an accident. But Mel snapped his eyes up, sharp and glassy, and said, "This wasn't an accident, and it definitely wasn't sudden." According to Mel, this was a slow-motion disaster that stretched out over 10 long years. Everyone close enough saw the cracks forming, but nobody had the courage to step in. They cared too much for Rob to face him head-on, and that's where the real heartbreak hit. Mel, the man who could light up any room, admitted that everyone around Rob and Michelle knew Nick was spiraling. They saw the warning signs clear as day, and still, they kept quiet. But Mel made sure to say, this wasn't about a monster suddenly snapping. It was about love pushed too far. Love that turned into the very thing that tore the whole family apart. Then, his voice dropped, and he spoke about one Sunday afternoon, 6 months before everything went down, that still haunts him to this day. It was a calm day, sunlight spilling through the window, the kind of quiet that's supposed to feel peaceful, but didn't. Rob showed up at Mel's place like he had for years, same routine, same easy rhythm, except this time, something felt off. Rob didn't touch his food. He just paced the floor, jumpy and wired, with a kind of dread you could feel in the air. Mel said Rob looked like a man being hunted inside his own life. That's when Rob confessed. Nick had moved back into the Brentwood estate after another failed rehab attempt. But this time, the whole thing felt different, darker. Even though Nick was in his 30s, everyone still called him the boy. And that, Mel said, told you everything. Rob admitted Mick had become unpredictable, paranoid, snapping without warning, his mood swinging like a live wire ready to spark. The tension at home? Toxic. Then Rob said something that made Mel go cold. He whispered that he'd started locking his bedroom door at night. Rob Reiner, the man everyone saw as warm, open, and full of heart, now sleeping behind a locked door in his own house. That's not concern, that's fear. When Mel asked, why not call the cops? Why not get help? Rob gave an answer that still echoes in Mel's memory. He said, I promised Michelle I wouldn't give up on him. If I kick him out, he's on the street. If I keep him here, maybe I can save him. Mo slammed his hand on the armrest when he told it. He said he shouted at Rob, told him straight that he wasn't saving his son, he was just losing himself trying. He was protecting danger, and Rob just wouldn't hear it. That classic Reiner stubbornness kicked in. The same iron will that made him a Hollywood legend was now pushing him straight toward disaster. The drive that once made Rob upstandable on a film set had turned deadly behind closed doors. Mel Brooks said that refusal to set boundaries wasn't strength anymore, and he came to real breaking point. Sure, the violence grabbed all the headlines, but what Mel revealed next cut even deeper. It wasn't just about rage, it was about money. People look at the Reiner name, the Castle Rock empire, the long legacy of success, and think wealth shields you from pain. But Mel said flat out, that couldn't be further from the truth. Over the last 2 years, it wasn't just their hearts breaking, it was their bank accounts bleeding too. Not because Rob and Michelle were anywhere near broke, but because the pressure never let up. Mel said Nick's demands turned ruthless. He wasn't asking anymore. He was demanding, throwing guilt around like a weapon, saying it was payback for how he was raised. The love that built their empire had turned into a storm they couldn't escape. Mel said Nick had learned to twist everything. His demands weren't just requests, they were reparations. He turned his parents' kindness and open-hearted values into pure guilt. He weaponized their compassion, using it to squeeze them emotionally and financially. Nick pushed the idea that his pain, his struggles, his failures somehow deserved millions, and he pushed that story like it was gospel. Mel said it wasn't chaos, it was strategy, cold and deliberate. Rob would come over to Mel's house, eyes red, phone trembling in his hands, scrolling through texts that were brutal, messages dripping with manipulation and blame. Nick accused his father of everything, his pain, his addictions, his broken dreams. And yet, somehow, every single time, Rob still gave in. One day he'd buy him a car, the next he'd cover rent or throw money at another doomed project. Mel called it the Hollywood illusion, that desperate belief that if you throw enough money, love, or energy at a problem, you can rewrite the ending. Rob truly believed he could direct his son's recovery the same way he directed a film. Set the scene, fix the lighting, rewrite the script, and somehow make it all work out. But life doesn't work like a movie. There are no reshoots, no second takes. Mel said he saw the storm coming before anyone else would admit it. It all became painfully clear during the holidays last year. A cozy family gathering that felt tense the second Nick stepped through the door. The air was tight, electric, like it could shatter with one wrong word. Mel couldn't take his eyes off Nick. But more than that, he couldn't stop watching the way Nick's eyes stayed locked on Rob. He said it wasn't the look of a son anymore. It was cold, sharp, territorial. Then Rob cracked one of his classic self-deprecating jokes, the kind that always made people laugh. Everyone smiled, except Nick. Nick didn't even blink, just sat there like stone. Later that night, Mel pulled Rob aside, gripped his shoulders, and begged him to wake up. He said,
"Robbie, you need to get him out. He doesn't look at you with love. He looks at you with ownership."
Mel poured every ounce of emotion into those words. But Rob, being the loyal and gentle soul he was, took it the wrong way. He shook his head and said softly, "You don't understand him like I do. He's hurting." That's when Mel's voice cracked during the interview. Not for himself, but for Rob, and for the boy he once knew. The same kid who used to crawl around Carl Reiner's living room floor, laughing at Mel's jokes. The boy who grew into a man who couldn't tell the difference between love and enabling. Mel said that guilt still gnaws at him every night. As one of the last living pillars of that golden age of comedy, he feels like he failed, not just his friends, but his whole legacy. The part that crushes him most, he never called the police himself. He said that decision still weighs on him like a stone he'll carry to the end. Then came the moment that froze everyone in the room, the night it actually happened. The official reports list times, locations, stereo details. But Mel said he knows the real story. He remembers the exact feeling of that night, because Rob called him just hours before everything fell apart. It was late. Mel was already in bed when the phone started ringing. He almost ignored it, but something deep in his gut told him to pick up. On the other end was Rob, his voice low, shaky, barely a whisper. There were no jokes this time, no small talk, just a heaviness that made Mel's chest tighten. Mel said he wasn't saying goodbye, but it felt like goodbye. Rob told him, "He's losing control again. He's shouting about the will. He thinks we're cutting him out." Mel's heart jumped. He panicked. He said he told Rob, "Leave. Robbie, get in the car. Come here now." He begged him again and again. But then Rob said something that froze Mel cold. "I can't leave Michelle. She's with him. She's trying to calm him down. If I go, He'll take it out on her. When Mel repeated that line during the interview, he went completely silent. Rob Reiner stayed in that house that night, not out of denial, but out of love. He knew the danger, knew how far things had gone, but he couldn't abandon his wife in the middle of that chaos. He stayed to protect her, knowing full well what it might cost him. That was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard Rob Reiner's voice. The media loves to paint Nick as pure chaos, but Mel doesn't buy that version. He said you can't understand what really happened without looking at the years of resentment, pressure, and pain that had been building like a ticking time bomb long before that final night. Mel called it the shadow of Carl Reiner, the shadow of legacy itself, the impossible weight of being born into greatness and trying to stand tall when the whole world already expects perfection. Mel said that kind of inheritance can crush a person if they're not built tough enough to carry it. According to him, Nick wasn't without talent. He had ideas, he had vision, but he wanted the glory without the grind, the spotlight without the struggle. When Hollywood didn't roll out the red carpet for him, he didn't look inward. He looked for someone to blame. And that blame landed squarely on the man who had given in everything. Nick resented Rob for being too big, too respected, too loved. He convinced himself that his father's success had stolen his own future, that every closed door, every failed project, every lost chance was somehow Rob's fault. Mel said it was a pattern he'd seen 100 times in Hollywood, jealousy creeping in, eating people alive from the inside out. But this time, it went darker than anything he ever witnessed. From the outside, that Brentwood mansion looked like perfection. Manicured lawns, trimmed hedges, a picture of control and comfort. To the world, it screamed success and stability. But inside, Mel said the cracks had been spreading for years. The decay was silent but merciless. And Mel didn't just blame the family dynamic. He went after the entire system that surrounded them. His tone sharpened when he started talking about the so-called professionals, the therapists, consultants, and doctors who were supposed to protect that family. He said they were all getting paid to guide, to help, to see the warning signs, but instead, they brushed them off. According to Mel, they told Rob and Michelle that tough love was outdated, that boundaries were cruel, and that compassion would fix everything. They called it radical compassion. They softened the truth until it completely disappeared. They sugarcoated everything, and Mel said it with pure bitterness. He claimed those so-called experts took Rob's money just to feed him comfort, telling him exactly what he wanted to hear, that Nick was struggling, not dangerous. Mel didn't hold back for a second. He called them accomplices, saying they dressed up destruction in polite words and hid it behind clean medical labels. They sanitized it, he said, his voice shaking. They gave it a name. They filed it away. But they never said what it really was. A ticking time bomb ready to explode. Mel said that's why he's speaking now. He doesn't care about the trial, the verdict, or the headlines. To him, the courtroom is just paperwork. The real story's already written in the pain of what was lost. What Mel wants is for people to remember Rob Reiner for who he truly was, not just what happened to him. He doesn't want Rob remembered as a victim, but as a man who refused to give up, even when life was tearing him apart from the inside. Rob didn't walk away. He stayed. Mel said softly that Rob believed he could still be the father his son needed, the kind of man who doesn't run when things get ugly. That's what real love looks like, Mel said. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's standing in the fire because you still believe love might fix it. Everyone says they'd give everything for their kids, but Mel whispered, Rob actually did. And then his voice cracked. Because that kind of love didn't save his son. It consumed them both. It didn't bring peace. It only sealed Nick's fate for good. As the interview came to a quiet close, Mel fell silent. The room around him seemed to speak on its own. Walls lined with old movie posters, photos of Carl and Rob smiling on set, shots from Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. And in the corner, a framed picture of Anne Bancroft beaming with warmth. Mel's eyes wandered slowly across the room, surrounded by ghosts of laughter and the heavy shadow of legacy pressing in on him. He looked like a man stranded on an island, built out of memories, holding tight to whatever light still flickered inside. Mel said the hardest part now isn't the anger, it's the silence. The phone doesn't ring anymore. The Sunday dinners are gone, and the laughter that once filled the air has completely vanished. That silence, Mel said softly, is the loudest sound I've ever known. Then his voice dropped to almost a whisper. The link to Carl is gone. Ah, and the last one. He said that truth will follow him for the rest of his life. The hardest truth being that he saw it coming and still couldn't stop it. The weight doesn't fade, it just sinks deeper with time. Mel mentioned the private funeral. Far from cameras, far from red carpets or press flashes. He said he'll speak there, but warned no one should expect jokes. No humor, no clever distractions, just raw honesty. He plans to stand in front of everyone and tell the same truth he told that reporter. Unfiltered, heavy, and real. He wants every powerful parent in Hollywood to hear it, to finally stop pretending that money can fix what love refuses to face. You can't love danger out of someone, Mel said sharply. You can't buy it away. You can't explain it away. For a man who built his entire life on turning pain into laughter, those words hit like a gut punch. Mel said quietly, "There's no comedy left in this story. No satire, no punchline, no twist to make it easier to bear. This isn't absurd," he said. "This is what happens when love loses balance." As the journalist started to pack up, Mel suddenly reached out and grabbed his arm. He wasn't finished. His tone changed, low and serious, almost trembling. He said there was something people didn't know, something that still haunted him. "Nick didn't act alone," Mel said. His voice dropped even further. He claimed there were people around Nick, so-called friends, who fought off Rob's generosity, who lived on his dime, and whispered poison into Mick's ear just to keep the chaos going. Mel's voice cracked as he said it. "Nick may have held the weapon," he whispered, "but plenty of people helped sharpen the blade." That one line hung heavy in the air, cold and final. This wasn't the Mel Brooks the world knew. Not the legend, not the entertainer who could spin tragedy into a punchline. This was someone else entirely, the witness, the truth teller. A man stripped of humor, stripped of showmanship, standing face to face with the ugliest kind of reality. He couldn't joke it away anymore. It shattered the shiny image of the Reiner legacy. The awards, the applause, the perfect Brentwood reputation, all gone. What was left were people, fragile, flawed, hopeful souls who loved too deeply, forgave too easily, and realized far too late where that love was leading. When the trial starts in January, and the cameras zoom in on Nick Reiner in his orange jumpsuit, Mel says the world shouldn't look away. Don't scroll past it, remember him. 98 years old, sitting alone in his chair, crying for the boy he once bounced on his knee, and the best friend he couldn't save. Real truth isn't pretty. It's made of quiet moments, ignored warnings, and doors left unlocked because locking them felt too cruel. That's the part no one ever talks about. Not the explosion, but the slow unraveling that came before. Mel's silence is broken now, and its echo lingers like a cold wind. The reminder that even those who spent their lives giving us laughter and happy endings still have to live through the darkest stories themselves. The interview wouldn't end with drama. It ended in stillness. Mel turned toward the window, staring out at the blinding California sun. The light of the black ties, in nothing. "Tell me what you have. Do you say you had a better chance?" Mel's body seemed frail, his face carved with merely a century of laughter and loss. But his eyes were clear, steady, and fierce. He said he's done protecting illusions. No more polishing legacies. No more guarding reputations. He's not protecting names anymore. He's protecting truth. And that truth, as Mel tells it, is harsh but real. Rob Reiner wasn't destroyed in one tragic night. He was slowly eaten away by the very life he tried so hard to protect. That kind of heartbreak, Mel said, doesn't fade with time. No amount of laughter can patch it up. What's left now is the reckoning, the reminder that behind every perfect photo and every spotless legacy, there are cracks we pretend not to see. Mel Brooks did what few friends ever could. He told the raw, uncomfortable truth about the man he loved most. And now that truth just hangs there in the air, impossible to ignore. He stripped away the polish and showed the pain beneath it. And that's exactly why people need to listen. When a man near the end of his life feels forced to speak out like this, turning away would be nothing short of arrogance. The loss of Rob Reiner didn't just break hearts, it shook Hollywood to its core. But Mel believes that if people truly take in the message behind his friend's tragedy, maybe, just maybe, it'll stop the cycle that keeps replaying in silence. The investigation will continue. The trial will come. But to Mel, the real verdict's already been delivered. Mel says the system failed, the experts failed, and, most painfully, the endless love inside the Reiner family failed too. It's a brutal truth, one he never wanted to face, but it's the only honest one left. And now that truth sits heavy in everyone's hands as the headlines fade away. He's haunted by a single image, An old man sitting alone in a quiet room, carrying the weight of a dynasty's end. That weight doesn't fade when the cameras shut off or the journalists leave. It follows him through long, sleepless nights, when there's no laughter left to mask the pain. This isn't about blame, Mel said softly. It's about honesty, about saying what everyone around Rob saw, but couldn't bring themselves to admit while there was still time. Mel insists he's not rewriting history or tearing anyone down. He's just telling it exactly how it was. Mel says he's making sure the myth doesn't turn into a lie. He doesn't want Rob remembered as just another victim or headline. He wants people to see everything that led there. The quiet ears, the ignored warnings, the gentle excuses, and the love that blinded instead of saved. This story isn't supposed to be comfortable, Mel said, because real life isn't meat. It leaves cracks, it leaves guilt, it leaves you staring at the ceiling, wondering how one different choice could have changed everything. He admitted that speaking out doesn't bring peace. In fact, it cuts deeper, but silence was worse. Silence, he said, felt like betrayal, a way of pretending. So now he talks, not as a legend or a comedian, but as an old man who loved his friend and had to watch him walk straight into something he couldn't stop. That truth, raw, heavy, unfinished, lingers in the air long after Mel stops talking. And then, almost quietly, he shared something that never made the headlines, but the reporter said he'd never forget it. Mel said the hardest part isn't just losing Rob. It's realizing how close everyone came to stopping it, and still didn't. He spoke about the warning signs that only made sense in hindsight, the unease, the tension, the fear no one dared to name. Melissa Sue acted even he doubted himself sometimes, wondering if he was being dramatic, if age had made him paranoid, if love had blinded him too. And then he said something that stuck like a knife. That self-doubt, that's what danger feeds on. It grows in hesitation. It survives in politeness. It thrives when people choose comfort over confrontation, Mel said. Rob lived in that tension, torn between protecting his family and protecting the image of perfection he'd spent his whole life building. He didn't want to be the dad who gave up, or the man who admitted things were out of control. That pressure to stay patient and kind ended up trapping him. The hardest part, Mel said, is knowing none of it came from bad intentions. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing, giving one more chance, believing love could fix what it couldn't. Mel leaned back, exhaustion carved into his face. Love without limits, he said softly, stops being love. It turns into fear dressed as compassion. He didn't look angry anymore, just worn down by years of regret. It was clear he wasn't speaking for attention or legacy. He was speaking because the truth had gotten too heavy to carry alone. When people called the tragedy unthinkable, Mel didn't hold back. That's how the world avoids responsibility, he said. If it's unthinkable, then nobody has to admit what they ignored. This, he told the reporter, wasn't lightning from a clear sky. It wasn't lightning. It was a storm that warned everyone before it hit, Mel said. Hollywood, he explained, has a dangerous way of normalizing dysfunction when it's dressed up with talent and money. The behavior that would never fly in an ordinary family gets brushed off as artistic or misunderstood. Red flags become PR lines, and real danger gets treated like an inconvenience. Rob Reiner, Mel said, got trapped inside that same system. Everyone told him to be kind, patient, understanding, but almost no one told him to be firm, and even fewer told him to be afraid. Fear isn't weakness, Mel said softly, it's information. But Rob was surrounded by people who convinced him to ignore it. There's a line between empathy and surrender, Mel said. And Rob crossed it without even realizing, because he was loyal to the end. Rob truly believed love could outlast anything, if he just stayed long enough. But Mel warned that belief, pure as it sounds, can turn fatal when reality refuses to play along. His voice trembled, not from anger, but from recognition. Too many families will see themselves in this, he said. The silence, the excuses, the hope that tomorrow fixes what today clearly won't. That, Mel added, is why he keeps speaking. Not to shame anyone, but to kill the illusion that this tragedy came out of nowhere. Sometimes the warning isn't silent, it's screaming, and people just don't want to hear it. Fame protects no one, not from pain, betrayal, or the people you love most. Rob Reiner's legacy will always live through his films. But now, because Mel Brooks chose truth over silence, it carries something deeper, a warning about the limits of love and how fragile the human heart can be. This story was never meant to comfort. It was meant to wake us up. Pretending otherwise only ensures it happens again. The only way to honor someone truly gone is to tell the truth, raw, human, and real. So don't let this story fade with the headlines. Let it challenge you, make you think, and make you see your own silences. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and see you on the next one.